Happy Wednesday, everyone, and welcome to Live Weather Impact on WCNC Charlotte, some app, or I guess really wherever you get streaming. I'm meteorologist Brittany Van Voorhees. Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich is off today. Let's see some hands in the studio. Raise your hand if you've seen pictures or videos of the wildfire smoke.
I mean, I am your producer.
I was going to say,
these
are three meteorologists, forecasters, weather producers, whatever you want to call them. So I'm really not surprised about that. If you at home have not seen some of these pictures and videos, I do want to start by letting you know that we are not going to see the same orange like other parts of the country, but we are going to see impacts from the wildfire smoke. I have no idea where this is, James. You'll have to tell me.
Chicago.
Oh, there you go, Chicago. I really honestly, being from Atlanta, I don't really know a lot of cities like off the top of my head because, you know, Charlotte, Atlanta.
I should reformat the segment as a quiz.
Oh, please don't. Geography, if you have me look at a map, that's different, but like city skylines, no.
That's Toronto.
Okay. I would have said Seattle because I thought that looked like the Space Needle. Either way.
Here's live outside.
Okay, thank you. So you can see it's not nearly as hazy here in Charlotte, but again, we are going to see impacts here from the smoke over the next couple of days. So today we were under an air quality alert. Now this is kind of a multiple section thing here. It was mostly because of ground level ozone, which happens when it's hot and humid and hazy. I know we've talked about this, where the ground level ozone mixes with the chemicals near the ground. And when there's not a lot of rain, you don't get anything to mix these out. But the smoke and the dust and really just the overall additional particulates in the atmosphere, that's going to contribute to likely more air quality issues by the end of the week as the smoke and the dust gets closer to us. Now, on top of that, air quality alerts, no shocker, are in some of these areas being directly impacted right now from the wildfire smoke. You can actually see the difference here on satellite between the clouds. That's the areas of white, and then you can see those little spots of brown here. All of that smoke and dust and just mess that's just continuously streaming into these areas, which is why when the sun is bouncing off of these particulates, you're getting that orange haze. Today, ironically, I actually did a weather IQ about clouds and different colors and things like that based on the amount of moisture or the particulates, and it just so happens that this eventually started to impact these areas. So if you're interested in watching that, maybe we'll have it on the show at some point this week, but you can always get that over on our Weather IQ YouTube page. Closer to home, again, look, there is some dust being picked up here on satellite, a little bit over Raleigh, northeastern parts there of North Carolina, but again, it's not the bulk like what we're seeing up to the north. We are not going to see orange skies like that. But we will see more vibrant sunrises and sunsets because, as we've often talked about, when you have those additional particulates in the atmosphere and the light is bouncing off them, as you get the reddish sky once the sun goes down, those colors can become more vibrant. Now, with that being said, if you have dust, if you have smoke, and you have air quality issues because of ground level ozone, what do we think is going to happen Thursday and Friday when temperatures get even hotter? You guessed it. More likely air quality issues. So 96 and 97 respectively the next 2 days. Today we are at 94. Similar to today, lots of sunshine that heats up the atmosphere and causes this higher risk. By this weekend, we will see some higher rain chances that could break things apart a bit. And so I am optimistic that that will help not only with the air quality issues, but also with the drought. We will have a new drought update tomorrow. These come out at 8:30 in the morning on Thursdays. This will include any rain that fell through Tuesday, but I want to remind you of something that Brad's reminded you guys about every single day when he's not here and I'm not filling in, is that drought takes a while to develop, but a while also to get out of. So if you saw flash flooding the last few days, you're like, I'm done with the rain, but not everybody has seen it. So don't expect widespread help with this new drought update. It will likely be very centered and isolated over those areas that have seen widespread rain. Tomorrow, a brief shower, thunderstorm possible, not a ton. Friday, though, I do think we start to break apart a bit, this high pressure and this cap. So a few more areas of storms, much higher, though, west of the I-77 corridor. I know this particular map looks really active, but notice a lot of it is out of our viewing area west of Shelby, North Carolina. Wider view here keeps us nice and calm for most of the morning Saturday. And then I do think Saturday is probably your next best chance to see more widespread scattered areas of showers and thunderstorms. Now, one thing we will not be lacking, regardless of the heat, regardless of the haze, is atmospheric moisture as we enter the next few days, because we are so humid already. And then on top of that, we're watching an area of low pressure that could develop in the Gulf heading into this weekend. Regardless of whether or not it becomes a tropical system, at this point it looks pretty unlikely. I think it's going to run out of time, and if it does, maybe a tropical depression at best. But atmospheric moisture essentially streams across the eastern seaboard, and we get some of that impact here in Charlotte by the latter half of the weekend and early next week. Now notice it's much more humid along the immediate coastline. It's because it's where the center is likely going to be tracking. Again, regardless of development, right now it's at 20%. I'm not impressed with this, but I do think that it does kind of pique our interest again, not only because of the tropical moisture, which results in downpours, but also because we know it's that time of the year. We're getting closer and closer to August. As we know, August 1st and after is about 90 or so % of tropical moisture and tropical storms and hurricanes. 73 tomorrow morning. Temperatures again mid to upper 90s by the afternoon. No widespread risk for showers and thunderstorms, but that does change again as we hit the weekend. Better rain chances, better coverage overall, especially Sunday and Monday. Now things do look to ebb and flow as we enter the middle part of next week, but at a minimum, better rain chances Sunday and Monday will be very, very beneficial. We have so much to talk about coming up in the show. We will talk more about the wildfire smoke. Tim and I are going to break down if we did permanent daylight saving time. There are so many things, not just in the weather world, but really in the science world over the next few days. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just about 2 minutes with everything you need to know.
Weather Impact Live with Brad Panovich is sponsored by Moisture Lock, crawl space, basement, and foundation repair experts serving the Carolinas since 1988.
Tired of all this rain? Does your yard look like a swamp after it rains? Hi, I'm Greg Doggett with Moisture Lock, Charlotte's premier waterproofing and foundation repair company. The longer water sits, the softer soil will become. This can cause foundation issues. If you're having drainage issues, contact Moisture Lock. We'll get the water away from your home and out of your yard.
Moisture Lock, stabilize, enhance, protect.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm, again, WCNC Charlotte meteorologist Brittany Van Voorhees. Oh, James, you went to meet. In the center there, the very handsome Chief Meteorologist Tim Buckley from WFMY News 2 in Greensboro. And, of course,
Hello.
our wonderful Rachel Mosshammer, who is our WCNC Charlotte weather intern this summer. She is working right now on a dual degree in meteorology and journalism from OU and Mississippi State. So thanks for being here, Rach.
Yeah, you made me sound a lot smarter than I am. A dual degree. I feel so like.
I mean, technically you are. We were just talking about
I know.
school
I
before
just
the show.
like saying it out loud. I'm like, oh wow, I'm doing that. you know.
Tim, you're looking very tan.
It must be my lack of responsibility in the sunshine. I'm going to attribute it to that, something along those lines. But yes, something like that. You know, we're still in the middle of summer here.
I thought you were going to say your lack of responsibility in life. And I was like, Tim, don't admit that on the stream.
Just in general.
Okay, well, we have a lot to talk about. Tim, you actually brought up a good point. We're in essentially our hottest stretch of the year in Charlotte. We see an average high of 91, essentially starting the 12th, I believe through the 19th. I'll have to double check that. What is your hottest average high in Greensboro?
Yeah, so we're at it right now also. So we're at 89 up here. That's our biggest number throughout the calendar year. Mid-July, across pretty much, I would assume, all of the Carolinas, it's our hottest time of the year. It's a little bit of a lag after that summer solstice, which happens in late June, but it's what you would expect. And from here on out, you know, especially once you get into August, that's when those average highs tick down ever so slightly. I would assume it's the same for the Charlotte area, too.
Yeah, so I just double checked. It's the 11th through the 21st, and it's 91. Ours previous highest high, the climate data from 1960 to 1990 was 89, but we jumped by 2 degrees with the 1990 to 2020, which I know you and Brad have talked about before on the stream. But when we talk about, you know, heat waves and things like that, it is interesting sometimes that now because our base is essentially 2 degrees hotter, that while 91 compared to 95, maybe to people seems, okay, well, 4 degrees, well, it used to be 6 degrees. And so it's like those small changes over time are very interesting to watch.
For sure. Yeah, the summers have been getting hotter, and you know the biggest thing we've noticed too are those nighttime lows, right? Mm-hmm. So those overnight lows haven't been quite as cool as you might expect in recent years. Odd to say that now that we just had a couple mornings in the 60s, but those muggy mornings they'll be on their way back as well.
I wish I could have some mornings in the 60s. That would be nice. We're not as cool as you, but it's okay. Well, I'm not as cool as you either, so different story for a different day. Do you want to talk wildfire smoke? Is that what everybody thinks? I feel like that's one that's streaming like crazy on social media.
Producer
Sure.
shaking his head yes.
Yeah, James also shaking his head yes.
Here.
Yes.
Here's a
yes.
live look on Ontario.
There you go, Ontario. Tim, did you know that was Ontario?
I did. I grew up across the lake from Ontario, so probably
yeah.
about a 24-hour swim across the water from where I grew up, but a 4-hour drive. That's Toronto, and you can see their wildfire smoke is really bad, and even for them, the wildfires are really far away, I believe, from that part of Ontario. They're kind of coming from over north of Lake Superior, if I'm correct.
This
Yeah.
is closer to Tim's neck of the woods.
That
Here's
is
some
much
buffalo.
closer. There you
Yeah,
go.
it's just not good, and you know, this is not fun. Brittany and Rachel, do you remember this from a couple years ago?
I do remember that because it was New York City, right? That was like, it looked red. It looked crazy. People were sending pictures like, and I do think sometimes in the age of social media, right, because we can take pictures and videos and it's so shareable, sometimes people feel like they're seeing these things for the first time, but we know they've happened. It's just that with this day and age, it's so much easier to, you know, like those from Carrie, I believe, like her parents sent them from Buffalo, and it's like she lives in Charlotte. It's just so easy to share and post and retweet and all that stuff.
And, you know, it kind of seems like our feeds are being, like, oversaturated, like you said, with all of these pictures and stuff like that. And so, of course, it comes back to us, and it feels like we've been talking about it so much, especially yesterday. We kind of spent all show talking about wildfires. And so it does feel like, you know, we're constantly talking about wildfires, but it is not all in your mind. We've definitely seen more activity, especially in the U.S. I pulled up earlier, the National Interagency for or Fire Center, they did a report on how many fires we've seen overall this year, and our activity total is up 133% here in the U.S. So the U.S. has seen a total of 36,000 wildfires individually and 3.1 million acres burned in total just this year. So that's up for the 10-year average. So it's definitely not on your mind. We definitely have been talking about it a lot, but this is why. So this drought, 53% of the country right now is in a drought. So that's where we're going to see, all of these big wildfire stories and pictures coming in.
Yeah, and the smoke goes so high, it gets picked up by the jet stream, and then it comes down to us. And so then we feel like, how the heck are we even seeing this so far, south? But it's really easy to see when we're under these kind of conditions where things are very easily picked up and moved around. Thank you for showing that futurecast, Tim. We really see the tail end of this here locally, but I do think hazy sunrises and sunsets over the next few days is probably the biggest thing we'll notice.
And it's always tricky forecasting these because you're really just forecasting a wind direction and where is this going to seep and how is it kind of getting into our air and then when does it leave. This is just a computer model. We're not giving a complete 100% endorsement of this, but Friday may be the day that we start to watch more carefully. Right now there is some indication that we could see a bit higher concentration. What I'm showing you here, this is actually near surface smoke. So that's the expectation that you might actually see limited visibility toward the surface and maybe even a little faint scent of this sort of thing, and the kind that could degrade air quality. But again, this is just a prediction. It's not set in stone. But Friday and Friday afternoon, you could start to maybe notice more of this in our area, and it probably will be fleeting. Our wind direction goes back southwest over the weekend, so not likely to stick around forever. But you know what? If these fires continue, I remember back in, I guess it was 2023, this is a deal for months. It wasn't just a one and done this week, that week. This was a thing that we had to watch basically every time you got a new cold front because you would get excited about the cool down, but then you had to worry, was it going to be ruined with the smoke and the air quality? So this will be something to watch as they fight those fires up there in southern Canada.
Yeah, and obviously common for us here in Mecklenburg County, but we already had an air quality alert today because mostly ground level ozone, but kind of that was number one, while the dust and the smoke, I think, is kind of in the back of people's minds. So I mentioned this during our main part of our newscast, but I also wouldn't be surprised if those got expanded too. So as Tim mentioned, if Friday's the worst, by Friday it could be equal ground level ozone and smoke. It's just kind of hard to tell right now, but it is something our team will be watching very closely. Smoke definitely has
so.
control.
It's eerie. Yeah, it's unsettling, and it's also, it can be hazardous. So if you are those folks that, maybe you have asthma or any sort of respiratory issues, if it gets to that point, we'll let you know when would be best to kind of hang inside for a little bit. But just know that that's something on our radar again. And otherwise, it can kind of be weird to look outside and see these scenes.
All right, Tim, we do have to show this video because it was crazy. We had this during our regular newscast, but there was a train crew that actually was surrounded by some of these wildfires earlier today. We're going to pull a picture or a video here that James found, but this is so scary. I'm going to let you listen to the audio.
Yeah. Holy sh**.
Okay, yeah, this is...
Okay, y'all need to hurry up here. Like, seriously, we're encased in flames now.
You guys gotta go backwards. No.
They don't look to be as concerned, I feel like, as I would be in this situation, but they essentially were surrounded by fire. This was in Ontario. It reminds me of all the videos that you saw after, what was it, the Palisades fire over in Los Angeles a couple years ago, where people were fleeing in their car and just being surrounded. So it's a very scary thing to watch. We were wondering kind of internally whether or not these train crews, work with meteorologists. And Rachel actually did say that she looked it up, and they do have meteorologists who work with them, similar to the FAA, in planes. But Tim, as you mentioned, sometimes hard to forecast exactly where these are going to spread. I do believe, James, right, everybody was okay.
That is correct. Yes,
so.
We're happy to report that everyone in this video got safely out of really what is like just an inferno.
Literally. Oh, goodness.
And just to think
terrifying.
of how
that was
hot.
going to be my question, was if they made it out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oof.
I don't know if I would be letting us show this video if they didn't, but yes.
Very hot in that car, I'm sure.
It's also amazing, you don't often see videos from within a fire because it's not safe, but here is some just kind of a little bit of a scene of what it's like inside one of these things. Even more terrifying than I think I would have expected.
Yeah,
I agree.
mean, I'll tell a quick story, which was that I was riding a train several years ago, and it went through some severe weather tornadoes, in fact, and I felt kind of trapped, right? Because it's not like you're in a car, it's not like you're in control, you can't just pull off, like you're on a set of rails. In this case, this is the crew, but they're waiting for dispatchers to tell them where they can go, where the other trains are. As a passenger, I felt like I had no control over the situation, so it can get a little scary.
Yeah, and similar to obviously if you're on a flight, right? Like you're in the pilot's hands. And so whether you're waiting for takeoff or you're trying to land or whatever the case is, they're also relying on the meteorologist and the FAA to tell them. And so, when you see these kind of weather related issues from planes or they're getting struck by lightning or whatever the case is, you just kind of start to think about like what is the difference between being in your own car and having that control of your life, your friends, your family members, whoever's with you, and when it's all in the hand of somebody else. And I mean, you hope you can trust them, James, but I guess in that moment you were probably like, what is going on?
And there's a lot of angry tweets back on my Twitter feed that you can go find if you're really interested in.
Yeah. Well, there's just a lot of weather and climate anxiety that exists in general, especially post Helene and post, wildfires and all these stories that we see, because again, it's so easy to share them, retweet, and then people want to understand, and those questions continue to get asked.
Big portion of the country is dealing with other kinds of really bad weather, and it's Texas right now. And this is something that we've got to talk about here for a couple of different reasons. There are some more active alerts, not just from flooding, which I'm sure we'll get to the flooding as well, as they've been dealing with some terrible flooding out that way, but also a tornado threat. So it's kind of a double whammy here where you're dealing with multiple things. And we're looking at some video now of a Texas tornado. This is, I believe, in the San Antonio area. Is that right, guys?
Yes, that was this morning, about 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, during the morning rush hour, as you can see.
Gosh.
And I believe they
And
are.
talk about a scary situation.
Yeah, I believe they are, or they were, at least in the last hour, under more tornado warnings in the same area. So this had been an ongoing event throughout the entire day in the San Antonio area. So like Brittany was mentioning earlier in her main weather, tornadoes can happen anywhere, especially in Texas. We had a couple, sound bites of residents kind of being caught off guard and saying, I didn't realize that tornadoes happened out here. But
which I do feel like, to be fair, they seemed like college students.
Yeah, they've probably
which,
never been out. Yeah.
When I was in college, even though I was studying meteorology, was I paying attention as much as I should be? Probably not. But we did want to let the people know that it's possible anywhere, especially in Texas.
Especially in Texas.
Yeah, and you talk about the tornado threat. That's one thing. We have a couple of reports here, and obviously, that video is scary for a number of reasons. Can you imagine seeing that anytime? But if you're stuck in traffic, I mean, they're not moving much. You don't have the maneuverability or the flexibility that you would otherwise. That's a bad situation to be sure. And it looks like we got some other videos here. That's a tornado on the ground, and definitely causing some problems over that way. A couple of these reports coming in. This is earlier this morning, probably the same video we were just looking at for you. And then this evening, so this would have been, I guess it's from last night, they had kind of an ongoing outbreak, right? They've got an upper low swirling around that area, so it's making it easy for these things to form. They had a funnel cloud pop up, but most of the storm reports in this area are all from flooding. And so as the flooding continues to be an issue, we're seeing these rare reports from the Weather Service. You can see the video there. It speaks for itself. The high flood danger is a real thing. And my mind kind of just goes back to the tragedy they had at the summer camp. I believe it was last year, guys. This is a pretty similar part of the country, a pretty similar geographical region.
Yeah, Camp Mystic. That was, of course, 4th of July weekend, so hard to forget that for sure. So similar part of the country, similar time frame too, since it's July. But Tim, I also too think about this, experience-wise, tracking things like this, and of course, Rachel, you as well, especially once you graduate with your dual degree and you're in your job. But when you have a double whammy like this, like a system that could create two problems, sometimes the messaging can get lost where people are so focused on the flooding, let's say, and they are not on the tornado, or vice versa. And also, I always think that tornadoes, you know, we have there's such a reaction that people have to them because they're so interesting visually. So sometimes flooding doesn't even really cross people's minds until it becomes something like this where it's life-threatening. And so I think it is sometimes a challenge for the meteorologists to think about it as, you know, a double whammy kind of situation, a 1-2 punch. There's two things we have to be tracking. And while San Antonio was showing, you know, those tornado reports, it was San Antonio and West that was seeing that flooding. So people sometimes think, oh my gosh, tornadoes, but it's like, think about how many more issues we have in this area related to flooding and flash flooding rather than tornadoes. I mean, it's probably like a 2% or 20% worry about the tornadoes and 80% about the flash flooding. It can also impact way more people.
Yeah, and especially, you know, as a student having to kind of relay some of that stuff in Oklahoma where, you know, it could be just a normal Tuesday that you get a bunch of tornadoes and flash flooding. I've definitely had to learn to really emphasize that flash flooding over a low tornado risk. Even though the low tornado risk is very important, we still want to touch on that because it's not totally zero. But, you know, I think we do underestimate just how powerful rushing water is or how deceptive that water level could be. We talked about that yesterday when we showed the truck being swept away by the water. It doesn't take much for your car to be lifted and swept off in floodwaters. So it is very important to, like you said, really emphasize that as well.
For sure, and this is not a hypothetical. We've seen that in the Carolinas, flood deaths much higher than tornado deaths. Of course, Helene, we can even do a whole show about that yet again. We have a sound here from the Texas governor who's dealing with this, another disaster in his state. So we'll go to that now.
The problem we have is there's a big danger by anybody driving through rising water. There will be a lot of rising water over the next 24 to 48 hours. Or there could be dangers by people being close to rapidly rising rivers, which will also be occurring in many places in the affected region over the next 24 to 48 hours. Already, there have been more than 75 people who have been rescued. Fortunately, we had the assets in place to be able to make those rescues. We will continue to have assets available to make rescues. The best situation, however, is that people are not in a situation where they need to be rescued.
I mean, we know Greg Abbott has dealt with this a lot over the last few years, as Tim mentioned. Flash flooding, one of the biggest risks. So unless you are told to try to evacuate, best situation is to stay at home, avoid flooded roadways. We say it all the time, turn around, don't drown. If you have friends or family members in those areas, please make sure they know what's going on. Tim, Rachel, we'll be back same time, same place tomorrow to talk more wildfires, I'm sure, probably more severe weather, and maybe even to get to daylight saving time changes and how that could impact us here in the Carolinas. Everybody have a blessed rest of your Wednesday, and we'll see you tomorrow. Stay safe.